A human body is a fragile thing. We carry so many complex internal systems. Layers of bone, muscle, and skin define our structure and shape. We also carry our hopes and fears, dreams and desires, our thoughts, feelings, and ability to perceive reality. More or less. The knowledge that our physical and mental being can be so easily damaged or destroyed fuels a lot of horror fiction. Body horror, in particular, is grounded in our physical fragility and our fears that we may not survive traumas and painful experiences, which may change us so thoroughly that they annihilate who we are. We are biologically motivated to avoid things that could be carrying disease, infections, or have other harmful properties. With horror, you can tap into this fear of change and explore it in a variety of ways, provided you approach it thoughtfully and with great care. There's a particular trope in horror that I think about a lot. It is existentially terrifying and deeply unsettling. I don't know if it has a specific name, but it is comfortably, despite being horrifically uncomfortable, within the scope of body horror. I'm referring to entities, monsters, devices, or what have you that take over human bodies from within or without and pilot them in some form or fashion. These beings have not figured out how human bodies work or move and don't seem concerned with learning it. We are obliterated as our bodies become a vessel, an incidental attachment, or just spare parts. Hi, my name is Matt, and with the help of my friend Lor, a scholar and writer of body horror, I want to talk about a few of these flesh pilots and the existential dread of losing ourselves to unconcerned entities. Now, my budget for videos is 0, so we're limiting the number of games and critters discussed herein. More like disgust, am I right? Naturally, we're limited to the games we've already played and can record. So, if you have an example that we don't cover, please feel free to leave a comment. A nice one. In this video, we're going to examine the creatures that operate, drag along, or otherwise repurpose the human body with no regard for our anatomy or being. As such, there are spoilers for The Evil Within, Dead Space, and The Surge, including some major story spoilers for The Evil Within in the next section. But I'll give you a good warning and a safe time code before I get into it. I played The Evil Within for the first time recently, and when I got to the DLC, I met these monsters. They're called cadavers, the result of certain haunted, the game's zombie-ish critters, developing large boils and transforming into these things that move around via a quite unsettling version of the crab walk. They can't see and don't seem to use the human head at all, but they are quite dangerous. If you make noise, they'll glow red and explode if they get too close to you. Or they'll trap you in their wide-open rib cages and then explode. Basically, cadavers warp and twist the human body into a shambling landmine. Since Julie Kidman, the protagonist of the DLC chapters, is mostly weaponless for the majority of her campaign, the best way of dealing with cadavers is to slowly creep around them and to try to get them to blow each other up. Despite how frustrating I found her campaign was to play, these creatures grabbed my attention instantly. Kidman is also a compelling enough character that I pushed through the parts I found irritating, and I'm glad I did. The story is excellent, and it helps set up some pieces for the sequel. She also saves by petting a cat. Save cat is good. Now, we're going to get into some major story spoilers for The Evil Within, including the big twist that the story centers on, because it's foundationally relevant to why the cadavers are significant. So, skip ahead to this time code if you don't want that spoiled for you. Within the reality of The Evil Within is a virtual world called STEM. At the core of STEM is the mind of a bitter and angry man called Ruvik, who more or less terrorizes and attempts to control anyone within this considerable sphere of influence. Ruvik draws on the personal histories and mental landscapes of those unfortunate enough to find themselves plugged into STEM to compose and populate the virtual space. Though much of it does come from his own life. Imagine Silent Hill as virtual instead of metaphysical. Because this world is crafted by a tormented and vengeful mind, it's also unstable. The projected spaces shift and change erratically as the characters move through them, making their orientation and progress difficult. This brings us back around to the DLC chapters, the assignment, and the consequence. And Julie Kidman. The cadavers are unique to her story. Okay, they do show up in a third DLC called The Executioner, but it's an arcadey bit and I'm not counting it as relevant. In fact, I didn't even bother recording footage of it. My read is that the cadavers are projections from Julie's mind, and they suggest a lot about how she sees people. My friend Michael describes Julie as constitutionally incapable of trusting people, which is perfectly apt and why she has to face these creatures.
Please, roll up your sleeve.
Whoa now! That's a big syringe. Don't think you're putting that fucking thing in me?
Miss Kidman, you agreed to this. Don't forget that. Nothing we're doing is malicious. It's only proper protocol.
You know what's proper protocol? Telling the person getting the fucking shot where the hell she is and what's the fucking point. Ow! Damn it, that hurt!
Her distrust of people manifests as human-ish creatures that don't even grasp how the human body works, as they shamble around using elbows as feet. To her, they are poorly disguised inhuman malice, but can still destroy her if she's not careful around them. The body horror here is an outward manifestation of that inward malice that she sees in everyone. The exploding boils hint at just how quickly she believes someone can turn on her and kill her, and this informs why she keeps everyone at arm's length. This perspective, where everyone is a threat, is a through line of the game, and is perfectly encapsulated in this monster. Being surrounded by humans you know you can't trust, but having to press on anyway, is a harrowing experience.
I've gone over the MedSci reports. These things are biorecombinators.
A perfect example of the human body being used as spare parts comes from Dead Space, a series that takes inspiration from films like Event Horizon and John Carpenter's The Thing. One of the major hallmarks of Dead Space's combat involves what the developers call strategic dismemberment. Rather than just shooting enemies, you have to cut off their limbs. They will continue to charge at you even without legs, so as a secondary attack you can make Isaac frantically stomp on them. The necromorphs are fittingly named. They are reanimated and mutated corpses, taking on whatever shape best served their purposes. Limbs are bent at unnatural angles, bones reused as fangs and claws, intestines becoming tentacles. Nothing is wasted. Anything unnecessary, like reproductive organs, are broken down, the cells becoming new muscles or whatever else is needed. Typically, necromorphs only use the tissue from individual hosts. For instance, babies become lurkers, able to climb on walls and ceilings with large Doc Ock-style tentacles protruding from their backs. The basic necromorph is called a slasher, due to their large bone scythe arms sprouting from the palms of their hands, shoulders, or even their backs. The variety in this one enemy alone shows that the body is merely a grab bag of parts, using the most effective form of mutation to accomplish their goal. Legs are bent inwards with the feet flapping around uselessly. The bones underneath have fused into a sort of peg leg, giving the slashers a distinct gait. In some variants, a smaller set of arms has grown from the torso. When you sever their legs, which is usually what you're going for, the slasher will keep crawling towards you until you take out its arms. Meanwhile, the majority of necromorphs are naked. Clothes are so passé, right? Some opt to keep them as a protective layer. Isaac's fellow engineers who have succumbed to the infection will still have partial rig armor attached, making them tougher. An effective method is to remove an arm from one side and a leg from the other, making it difficult for the necromorph to walk. This, of course, isn't to say necromorphs don't also use multiple bodies when the situation arises, especially when it comes to adapting the environment to better suit their needs. Just as animals like frogs or snakes need specific humidities to comfortably thrive, necromorphs need a helping hand in the form of a layer of meat covering an area to make it feel like home. This goopy bacteria-infected mass is called the corruption, and uses dead bodies as building material. Make no mistake though, these areas are alive and will pulsate and spit gas and waste matter into the air. I'm sure the smell makes Isaac thankful for his helmet. Because the necromorph infection is so damn good at its job, even after you've dismembered and smushed these guys into a pulp, they never fully destroyed. Fallen enemies can be seen writhing around with worm-like appendages protruding from their wounds. Given enough time, the cells will seek their comrades out to reform new bodies. #communism. The necromorphs, who seem to think humans come with a label saying "some assembly required," have no concern with human biology or skeletal structure. Our pieces are rearranged and adapted for their needs. The scientific definition of human is tossed aside. No limb, organ, arrangement of skin, or separation of personage has much significance to the discerning necromorph, apart from what it can be made into. and their cellular immortality means that our deceased and discombobulated forms will never find any measure of rest. Several forms of necromorphs scream and moan, and we really don't know how much of the consciousness of their victims remains. Hopefully, it's just a remnant of the host. Being forever trapped in a fleshy mass, unable to rest, is a truly horrifying notion. The entity that started the gears in my brain working on this subject is the zombie worker from The Surge, a game I really like but can't get far into because the first boss is a bit too much. In fact, most of the game is a tad too hard for me. The Surge follows a paraplegic man named Warren, who joins a corporate program that quite horrifically builds him into an exosuit to work for them. This scene contains no human presence apart from Warren, and the fact that they don't remove his clothes suggests that humans are likely not part of this process, which is also supported by the fact that the only humans you see in the intro are exosuited guards. The game digs into this concept early on with the zombie workers. This variety of enemy is more the exosuit than the person attached to it. Their movements are motivated by the remaining parts of the suit, with the rest of the body barely keeping up. Their aggressive and painful leaps are far too fast to be propelled by the attached dead person's legs. The body is more or less incidental as it's flung about by the machines. Like in Dead Space, body parts play a significant role in this grim story. The player can outfit Warren's head and individual limbs with different exosuit parts and weapons, which provide a variety of benefits and trade-offs. Likewise, the parts of many enemies, including the zombie worker, are individual targets that the player can switch between. Many of the exosuits are in ill repair or just missing parts, making the machines compensate for the lost functionality, twisting and lurching, favoring the limbs where their attachments are present. Attacking these motorized limbs can sever the exo parts, which the player can apply to their own suit. The implication therein is of Warren removing the human limb, which, need I remind you, was attached like this, so he can repurpose the part for his own survival. But where the necromorphs see the human body as a grab bag of random bits, Warren needs specific exo parts to propel those specific parts of his body. As such, human anatomy is disassembled with parts appraised individually. The body is not a singular form, but individual pieces, which are swapped out as needed. A singular part of the exobody is only as important as the attributes it offers, and since the character, and zombies alike, are fusions of body and exosuit, this means that Warren is constantly evaluating and replacing pieces of himself. A sci-fi horror ship of Theseus, if you will. He is no longer a singular being, but an amalgam of pieces evaluated by utility. It's a cold and mechanical view of humanity that favors function over form, but it's enforced by the very human need to survive. In the world of The Surge, to keep his life, Warren has to reconceptualize his own body. There's a potential analysis here of the relationship between prosthesis and the body for people who have lost or lost the use of parts of their bodies, but I think that's better left to someone who is more knowledgeable on that subject than me. The zombie workers are a grim prediction of the potential fate of our main character. With society collapsing and only a few scattered survivors, Warren's odds are slim. He'll only be able to keep himself going for so long. This approach to body horror is not too far removed from cyberpunk stories like Deus Ex: Human Revolution, which has a similar disquieting surgery snippet. Both games approach the idea from different genres, but they focus on commodifying human anatomy. A large corporation called Creo hangs over The Surge. The exosuits and work program are by their design, and just based on my observations in this early section of the game, this Doom world seems to be the result of their plans. The true horror here is not what technology will do to our bodies, but what capitalism will. The country I live in is still gripped by the COVID-19 pandemic. Case numbers and death tolls are high, and we seem to be surrounded by people who underestimate the virus or flagrantly don't care who their actions harm, including their own families. They seem to possess neither reason nor compassion for anyone. Due to my own issues with paranoia, when I have to go out, the air itself feels toxic, and people without masks are everywhere. Any one of them could transmit this dangerous virus to anyone else. Those of us trying to be careful can try our best to avoid them, but there's only so much we can do. I am genuinely apprehensive around anyone and everyone while I'm out. I also find myself in a state of dysphoria and anxiety. In the United States, people tell the young to go to college or learn a marketable skill. They don't specify what to do from there and imply that doing either of those things is enough and the work will just roll in. But that isn't how capitalism works, is it? I've done both of those recommendations. I have a master's degree and a few marketable skills that I'm passionate about. And yet, my skills are not enough. Capitalism, it seems, has no place for me. Additionally, despite my best efforts, my mental state only seems to be getting worse on the whole. Getting medicated has helped, but it's a life raft, and I'm stranded in the ocean. I didn't randomly pick the song I'm using for the conclusion. Alien, by Australian band RedHook, is an excellent expression of this feeling. I'm disconnected from myself in ways that are hard to articulate on my own. My pieces don't fit like they're supposed to. And more than that, I feel like I'm falling apart, inside and out, and I don't know what to do with these pieces of myself. This next bit is from my co-writer Lor, who says, "As for myself, I had a brush with how fragile we really are when I caught the big C virus a few months ago. I was sick for weeks and lost a scary amount of weight. Feeling my body literally getting weaker day by day was very scary. It's cliche to say it puts things in perspective, but it has got me thinking about the limitations of having a body. On the plus side, I'm paying a bit more attention to my health and knowing my limitations. Watching horror has really helped me get through a miserable time. These mental landscapes where we reside are troubling, unsettling, and often difficult to wrap our minds around. Furthermore, we don't get to deal with any of these situations in isolation. We have to contend with them all at once. One problem at a time sounds like good advice, but when they're interconnected and interwoven issues, that isn't feasible. And before we can work on any of these problems, we have to try to understand them, and ourselves, which adds another layer of difficulty. It's a frightening position. This is where horror stories can lend us a hand. Engaging with horror, or any fiction really, puts our pressing concerns on the back burner, and gives us a symbolic framework to start making sense of these frightening mental spaces. It's through body horror that I've been able to start getting a handle on these ideas, my intense distrust of people, and my dysphoria about my body and mind, both as pieces and as a whole. I don't have any answers as of yet, but I feel like I'm starting to ask the right questions.
Somebody once said I'm only human, but if that's the truth, then could I change? Why do I always break everything?
Thank you everyone for watching. First up, I want to thank Lor, my friend and writing partner on this piece. They're a lovely NB and a preeminent scholar and writer of the body horror genre. They write insightful analysis and truly disgusting horror that's made me feel icky all over, which I'm reasonably certain they'll take as a high compliment. I'll put links to their work in the description. I want to thank the band RedHook for being so cool about me using their music. They're a great rock band from Australia, and you should definitely check out their work. The song I used in this video is called Alien. It's from their recent album Bad Decisions. I'll link that as well. Their songs that have touched on mental illness have really spoken to me, and I appreciate them a lot. I'd also like to thank my friend Michael, with whom I chatted about The Evil Within and bounced some ideas off him. He's got a YouTube channel that you should check out, which I'll also link in the description. If you want to know more about me, I have this YouTube channel right here. I'm non-binary, I write short stories, and I post them on itch.io. And I'm part of a new flash fiction zine for charity, along with Lor and a few other talented writers. Our first issue is out now, and all of the proceeds from it will benefit the Indian Residential School Survivors Society. Links for all of that are also in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel or just leave a comment if you like. I've got a few other video ideas in various stages of development, so be sure to stay tuned. Thanks again, and I'll see you later.